This is the concentration and solubility lab. And we'll start by, I've already measured 10 milliliters of water, but I'll show that it's 10 milliliters. As you can see, it's just about 10 milliliters. So we'll pour this into a beaker. And we'll create a saturated solution with some table salt. So I've stirred in the table salt as much as I could, and I've agitated the water a bunch, and I'm fairly certain that now it's saturated. So now we will filter out the remaining salt. But first we'll record the mass of the Erlenmeyer flask, which is 50.5 grams. And I've recorded that here. And here I have my Erlenmeyer flask with my funnel and filter paper. And now I'll pour the salt solution into the Erlenmeyer flask. It's going to be hard to do this with one hand, so I'll record once I'm done. So I just finished pouring it out into the Erlenmeyer flask, and here we have salinized water. So there's no sun right now, but I'll take it outside to where it will be sunny and leave it there for the couple of days that it says. But next we'll start making the starch solution. So just to show, I'm going to leave it right here where there'll definitely be sun, even though there is none right now, and we'll come back to it in 2 days. So to begin the starch solution, we'll use this Flint Scientific starch, and we'll measure out 1 gram using this beaker. So, okay, it's zeroed at the weight of the beaker, and I'll measure 1 gram and continue recording once I've done that. So here we've measured 1 gram of starch. So here's the Erlenmeyer flask that I'll be using, and I'll zero it there. And I'll measure out 99 grams of the deionized water. So now I'll pour the 99 grams of deionized water into the starch beaker. And I'll stir that, and this will be the 1% solution. So I've finished stirring, and I've labeled it the 1% solution. So I decided it would be easier, instead of drying the previous Erlenmeyer flask, just to use an already dry one that I have, and measure 3 grams of starch. So we'll do that now. Start by zeroing the scale, and we'll measure 3 grams of starch. So here we've measured out 3 grams of starch into the Erlenmeyer flask. And now I'll measure 97 milliliters of the deionized water using my graduated cylinder. So we'll start with 50, and I'll show me pouring it in. So here's our first 50 milliliters. Pour that into the starch solution, or into the starch. And here's the final 47 milliliters of deionized water, which I'll pour. And I'll stir this so it's fully dissolved. So the starch should be fully dissolved in the 3% solution, and now here we have the 1% solution. First piece of dialysis tubing, and I'll try and open it up. Finally managed to open the dialysis tubing, and now I'll close one end of it. So I just finished sealing one of the ends of the dialysis tubing, and now I'll fill it up with 20 milliliters of the 1% solution. So here I have 20 milliliters of the 1% solution, which is right here, and I'll pour it into the dialysis tubing and seal it. So I've sealed both ends of the dialysis tubing, And now I'll weigh it. So I'll start by zeroing out the scale with this beaker. And then I'll put the dialysis tubing with the 20 milliliters of 1% in the beaker and measure it. So 18.8 grams, and I'll record that. And here you can see I've recorded the mass. And here we have the 30 milliliters of the 3% solution. And we will pour that into this beaker. And now we'll place the dialysis tubing into this beaker. And cover the beaker. And I'll let the beaker sit here covered by this book because I couldn't really find anything else to cover it. So I'll let it sit here covered for 3 days and check back in on it. So it's been a couple days, and as you can see, the water has mostly evaporated and we're left with the salt. And we'll put it on our mini scale. Here I have the weight of the Erlenmeyer flask on its own. And here we have the weight of the salt, 54.8, which I will record here. So here I've recorded the flask and the salt, and then just doing some simple subtraction, the mass of the salt, 4.3 grams. So now I'll continue to calculate the mass percent of the salt, the moles, and then the molarity of the salt solution. So here I've made my 3 calculations, the mass percent, the moles of salt, and then calculate the molarity. So next part of the experiment, tomorrow we'll check in on the dialysis tubing. So it's the next day, and it's time to remove the dialysis tubing and then find its weight. I've already zeroed it out, so I'll put the dialysis tubing in here and record its mass here. So I just removed it from the other beaker, and it's a mass of 17.3, which I will record here. So comparing my 2 measurements, my initial measurement was 18.8, and after 3 days, 17.3. So presumably water must have gone through the semi-permeable layer and into the beaker. And that is the end of this lab.